Hello dudes, dudettes, duders, and everyone in between, and welcome to the Bowtie Project. This is a park space in Los Angeles that has been approved for renovations, and I wanted to come shoot here before they do that construction so that we can see the before and after, get an idea of what this space was before it becomes whatever it will be. Perhaps there will be fewer nitrous oxide canisters strewn about the ground, but only time will tell. This video is not a profile of the Bowtie Project, a name that I did not come up with, thank you for asking. Instead, it's a review of the DJI RS2 gimbal, the sequel to the very popular RS1. I've been shooting on it for about a month now, and I wanted to share my thoughts, what's improved from the RS1 and what some of the new features are like, the differences between the base kit and the Pro Combo kit. And of course, maybe we will even answer that all-important question, is it worth the cost of admission? Yes, it is worth the cost of admission, with a caveat. With a bunch of caveats. In fact, this gimbal is actually more caveat than gimbal. Let's get into it. The RS2 features improvements across the board, including a carbon fiber build, stronger motors, better battery life, and it's even half a pound lighter than its older brother. Of course, that weight difference is only really noticeable after using the gimbal for a day and then putting it on a scale. I bought the Pro Combo, and that's what I've been using for the last month, learning it incrementally. This is a good time to mention that this is my own gear, and I'm discussing my own opinions. This review was not paid for by DJI or anyone else, nor did anyone provide me with the gear. The purchase was, however, subsidized by my business credit line, and that was provided by Thanks for the credit line, dudes! The Pro Combo gets you the gimbal, but the kit also comes with a Raveneye, a focus motor, and a snappy carrying case. That carrying case has already been retired and replaced with a hard case, because when it comes to equipment I care about, I always get hard cases. You're not looking at a man, you're looking at a statue of bourgeoisie luxury. Look up haute couture in the dictionary and you'll see a picture of my fanny pack. Let's talk about the improvements over the Ronin S. The most important improvement for me has nothing to do with the motors, the redesigned cradle, or even the addition of a touchscreen. No, ladies and gentlemen, the most necessary improvement over the RS1 is the fact that you can now charge batteries without having them attached to the gimbal. The charging port is now on the actual battery, which changes how you structure your entire shooting day when using the RS2. That's not even hyperbole. With the RS1, we would meter out power so carefully, only using the gimbal to power the camera in an emergency. As soon as lunch was called, we'd drop the gimbal on a charger, knowing how much we'd need that juice as the day waned on. In fact, I never even bought a second battery for the RS1 because there was no way to use it in the thick of production. If you were charging, you weren't filming. If you were filming, you weren't charging. Those days are past, and I couldn't be happier about it. I would call this a game changer, but honestly, the old design was so epically stupid that I must withhold praise. Congratulations, DJI. You've achieved base level competency with battery charging. The next improvement that's really changed how I use the device is the addition of the wheel next to the trigger. While the ergonomics do take a bit of getting used to, this ends up being terrifically versatile. You can set the wheel to do pretty much whatever you want, whether it's control the pan, tilt, or roll, or even adjust the focus and aperture if you're using a compatible camera and lens combination. It also has the ability to adjust camera settings, as you can see with the ISO adjustments I'm doing here. The third most significant improvement is the rebuild of the cradle. Look, I've never faulted DJI for not playing so well with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera series. The BMPCC has always been an unapologetically unwieldy device. I don't know if any other YouTuber has commented on this, but it's actually really difficult to fit those cameras in one's pocket. This is largely due to the camera's size. The RS2 receives the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera much better than the RS1, but it's not quite a marriage made in heaven, and we'll get back to that later in the review. Of course, there are tons of improvements beyond those. The quick release plate has been completely rethought, and it's kind of brilliant in its simplicity. The quick release plate has a quick release plate on top of it, making it easier to fine-tune balance and do battery or lens swaps. This is achieved with the quick release plate, a plate that can quickly release from the quick release plate, while leaving the quick release plate in the gimbal so that you can return the quick release plate to the quick release plate expediently. The gimbal actually comes with two quick release plates. One quick release plate is shorter, giving your camera a lower center of gravity. The other quick release plate is taller, allowing you to attach the focus motor, which we will get back to later. Between the quick release plate, the short quick release plate, and the tall quick release plate, I'm very confident that you will find a combination of quick release plate and quick release plate that suits your filming style. Aside from improvements over the previous model, there are additions to this unit that are entirely new. The most significant, of course, is the full-color touch screen. This allows you to do everything you'd expect when it comes to adjusting the settings of the gimbal. You've got mode controls, as well as controls for smoothness, motor tension, which axes are locked, if any, and a host of other options. The menus run really deep, and it's pretty easy to customize the RS2 to function exactly as you'd prefer. Of course, you don't get that customization for free. You will need to spend time with the gimbal testing settings to figure out what best suits your shooting style. Also new on this model are the motor locks. When not in use, you can lock the motors so that the gimbal doesn't flop around quite so badly. This was always a problem when returning the RS1 to its case, and while not an earth-shattering design revision, it's noticed, and it's appreciated. Not all the changes are for the best though. The batteries only have a 1/4 inch thread. Gone is the 3/8 inch thread that we had on the RS1. I know that I am in the minority in doing this, but I actually use that 3/8 inch thread for mounting the gimbal on a tripod, either for time-lapse shots or controlling the camera remotely. Yeah, you can attach the camera to a tripod head still, but it feels less sturdy as doing that raises up the center of gravity even more. Honestly, the removal of that mount isn't the end of the world, but bummer. The touchscreen, while a nice addition, also comes with enough quirks to mention. The first is that it's your typical lower-end touchscreen. It can feel unresponsive when you're using it, but then turn around and jump at the slightest accidental brush. Then there are the arm locks. While the motor locks feel sturdy and easy to use, the arm adjustment locks feel pretty cheap and like they're going to be loosening with wear. I won't be surprised if the arm adjustment locks don't last a full year before needing maintenance. It all adds up to a great piece of equipment with a lot of caveats, maybe too many. And those caveats continue from the base model to the Pro model. In fact, they get worse. All of the accessories that come with the Pro model honestly feel like more caveat than feature. First, there's the Raveneye, DJI's caveat incubator. This is a completely different class of device and probably warrants its own review separate from the RS2, but here's a quick overview. The Raveneye is a wireless transmitter that receives an HDMI signal from the camera. It sends it to the Ronin app and unlocks, you guessed it, higher functionality for the RS2. I've mentioned it before, and I'll say it again. I love buying hardware in this modern age. When I was growing up, if you bought a piece of equipment, the gear was the same on day one as it was when you finally retired it. The Zoom L20, the A10 Mini, the RS2, all of these devices are solid, really solid pieces of equipment out of the box, and they only get better as you dive into software controls. It's an awesome time to be producing creative content. Honestly, I hope to do precisely that one day. The first thing I want to be clear about is what the Raveneye is not. The Raveneye is a reference monitor and a way to control the Ronin remotely. It is not meant to be a high-definition wireless picture delivery device for broadcast. It is a control interface. We were getting dropped frames from 3 feet away from the device. Use it for reference. Use it to control the Ronin. Do not use it as a broadcast signal. What it does do, that is control the Ronin remotely and give you access to an expanded touch interface, It does pretty well, but with a bunch of caveats, like so many caveats. For real, put on a fresh pot of tea, we're gonna be here a while. The Raveneye is not plug-and-play hardware. It's plug and plug and plug and play hardware. First, you plug it into the gimbal with the underbelly called shoe mount. Then you plug it into the Ronin with a USB-C cable for a power supply. Then you plug it into the HDMI of the camera you're using. From there, it's as simple as turning it on. Wait, no, of course it's not. It's as simple as turning the gimbal on, turning the camera on, turning the Raveneye on, downloading the Ronin app, connecting the app to the gimbal, telling the app to connect to the Raveneye, having the app tell you to turn off Bluetooth for the Ronin app, but not for the phone, switching your phone's Wi-Fi signal over to the Raveneye, going back into the app, and activating the Raveneye. So simple, even a child could do it, as long as that child happens to be a DJI engineer. And what do you get for all this hassle? Well, it's honestly hard to say, as I don't really understand the benefits and they all come at a cost. On top of that, you can do everything with the Raveneye on the touch screen, just with dodgier response and a smaller screen. But if you want a slightly larger screen 3 inches away from the onboard screen, the Raveneye is a great way to achieve that, I suppose. Except that the phone cradle blocks the gimbal's movement, so, it's not so good, Al. Also in the app, you get a virtual joystick and a scroll wheel. In the event that you thought the physical joystick and scroll wheel were too precise and easy to use. You can also enable gyro controls in case you find yourself suddenly being the director of photography on upgrade, which honestly seems unlikely at this point. And you can record footage to your iPhone in the event that you want a compressed version of the video that you're already shooting uncompressed on a proper camera. So, la-di-da. Look, I'm being hard on the device. I'm sure there are use cases. In fact, the shot at the beginning of this video was done with the Raveneye, and I'm using the Raveneye right now, actually. It doesn't need to be attached to the RS2 to function, so I use it to make sure that we're in focus and that the camera is rolling by checking my I don't have to run back and forth to the tripod all the time. The Raveneye would also be really useful in shooting time lapses and keeping an eye on mounted cameras that aren't easily accessed. I can honestly see myself using it a lot, just not so much with the gimbal. Also, there's the almost useless facial tracking. This was a feature that was exciting on paper, as it was disappointing in practice. When connected to the gimbal, you can select something in frame to track and the gimbal will follow it auto-magically. This works, with a colossal caveat. It only works on very wide lenses, like 24mm and wider lenses. Anything more zoomed in and you're basically doomed. With anything but the subtlest movement when you're zoomed in, the gimbal gets confused really quickly and starts shaking its head in a decisive and very literal, no, not happening, bro. That said, this isn't a huge strike against the accessory for one reason. This feels like something that could be vastly improved with software updates. If those updates ever arrive, no harm, no foul. Until then, just assume the motion tracking is effectively useless for any professional shoots. And if you're anything like me, every shoot is a professional shoot, The other main selling point of this Pro combo is the focus motor. Again, it's a decent piece of hardware with way too many caveats. Setting up the motor is a complicated process in and of itself. Not quite as bad as the Raveneye, but still more trouble than it's ultimately worth. Not only is it a hassle to assemble the necessary pieces, but lens compatibility is far from perfect. As you can see, the motor only makes it to the zoom ring on the Sigma 18-35 lens. As it stands, the rod is just too short. That's exactly what she said. Depending on the shape and size of your lens, the focus motor might not work at all. The anamorphic lenses pair really well with the focus ring, and that's what you're seeing here. Unfortunately, the motor does shake the camera, and when you're on a 50mm lens on a micro 4/3 camera, that shake is very noticeable, to the point that you absolutely cannot use this motor for on-screen rack focuses. It's super handy for prepping focus on fully manual lenses like the anamorphics, but I would not recommend counting on this for adjusting focus while the camera is rolling. It's simply too bumpy a ride. There is the lens stabilization strap included in the Pro kit, and I imagine it would be useful in mitigating vibrations from the motor, but it's even more particular in lens and camera pairing than the motor is. If the motor will work as intended with half of your lens collection, assume you're going to be splitting that set in half again when it comes to the stabilization strap. At that point, you're spending so much time setting up and fine-tuning, this seemingly run-and-gun device is now slowing production down instead of accelerating it. That's something else worth mentioning. As you're probably picking up on in this review, the RS2 is not a weekend rental, especially the Pro Combo. You're going to spend a solid month learning how to use this device properly. More than that if this is your first gimbal. Finally, let's discuss unexpected costs. With any piece of equipment, there will always be necessary purchases to make the most of the gear. The RS2 is no different. If you plan on using the focus motor, assume that you're going to be buying one focus ring for each lens you want to use with it. You'll notice that the ring is a bit long, and once I've settled on a lens, I will want to cut it so that the ring can rotate effortlessly. Obviously overpriced at $10 a ring, these will add up quickly if you're buying them from DJI. Next, if you're pairing this gimbal with the Blackmagic Pocket Camera, you're in for a world of hurt. We've been shooting merrily to SSD drives for years now and love it. Unfortunately, the RS2 connects to the camera via USB-C. That means if we want to control the camera with the gimbal, and we do, we're going to have to invest in CFast cards, and those are very costly. Finally, there's the practice time. Gimbals are not a pick-it-up pro piece of equipment. It takes a lot of practice to operate this gear correctly. That's not a sunk cost though. I love these little guys and take them to every shoot, and the RS2 is a very capable upgrade from the RS1. In many ways, it's a proper sequel, bigger, better, and packed with new bells and whistles. Anytime it doesn't shine is when it got too ambitious. The Raveneye is interesting, but not quite ready for prime time, as is the focus motor. So, is the DJI Ronin S2 worth the price of admission? Like I said at the beginning of this review, yes, it absolutely is, with a caveat. Well, with a bunch of caveats. The caveat is that the Pro Combo, while not bad, isn't really worth the extra cost. I'm glad I got the Pro Combo. It's interesting to learn these tools, but nothing in the Pro kit is must-have gear. If I were buying again, I'd get the base kit and spend half of that extra money on another battery for the Ronin, and the other half on a date with my lovely wife. Since going on a date with my lovely wife likely isn't an option for you, the decision might not be as simple. Sorry, you probably can't go on a date with my wife. That sucks for you. But the gimbal's pretty good. Links in the description.